What's good, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's your girl, Neka. So today we're going to have another tea talk. As today, I'm going to call it Neka's News. So we're getting ready to go ahead and talk about DEI. So pretty much what DEI stands for. It stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is an important topic in the workplace. Diversity in the workplace refers to having staff members who represent different groups. Many characteristics about your employees can fall under diversity, including race, ethnicity, age, social economic status, gender, gender identity, such as transgender people, sexual orientation, and physical ability. Equality in the workplace means that all employees are given fair, impartial opportunities so everyone can be successful. That doesn't mean all employees get identical opportunities. Workplace inclusion means that all employees feel welcome to participate fully and be themselves. They feel a sense of belonging within the company and don't feel like they're a token employee to make the workplace seem more diverse. So, without inclusion, diversity often doesn't last. And remember that diversity, equality, and inclusion are all important and need to go together. So, focusing on one and ignoring the others can cause DEI to suffer. So I'm going to go ahead and let you see that DEI video that'll give you a more understanding of what I was talking about. Take a look.
Mandates, policies, and programs within the federal government this week, and he also put federal DEI workers on leave. Melissa Matani joins us now. She's the executive producer of our CBS News Confirmed team. So, Melissa, break down for us the history of DEI programs.
So DEI stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. You sometimes hear this as DIA. It stands for accessibility.
Ah, okay.
And, and a lot of people mistake DEI to stand for race, when actually it's much more than that. It's age, it's your gender, it's your physical ability, and your socioeconomic status. And basically what these programs do is they try to allow training opportunities, accessibility, to get into that sort of executive workplace so that our workplaces start to look like the societies that we live in. And history-wise, DEI has been around since the 1960s, linked very much to the civil rights movement. But it was a 1964 Civil Rights Act that banned employment discrimination based on all of these topics that I just mentioned, like race, color, religion, sex. But really, Lindsay, even though it's been around since the 1960s, it was in 2020 when, in the wake of George Floyd's murder, you'll remember we had these big protests on the streets. And that's when companies rushed to get more diverse people into executive positions. And with this big push, we also saw a big backlash with political figures on the right, people like Elon Musk really pushing back and saying that DEI equated to racism against white people and specifically white men. Really interesting, a Pew Research study from November last year, showed that 47% of white people, that's almost half, think that DEI initiatives are harmful specifically to white men, as we're trying to get more women into the workplace.
What does the data show us?
So this is really interesting. So when you look at the data, especially in terms of like how things change. So in 2020, when there was that big push, according to research by the University of North Carolina and Texas A&M, there were 253 black executives in 2020 in S&P 500 companies. By 2023, there were 417. So that's a big jump, but still that's under 500 people. Now compare that to white executives. Those numbers didn't shrink. It's not like they went down. They still went up. In 2020, there were 6,286. In 2023, 6,469. So just take a look, Lindsay, when we're talking about 417 compared to 6,469 white people, here you can see this huge disparity, and this is exactly why we need these programs.
And why everybody should be following CBS Confirmed on Instagram, because you guys put a lot of these infographics up there for people to see as well. Melissa Matani, thank you.
So it has been reported that President Donald Trump has put a federal freeze on all the funding. That included a lot of different things, but I'm going to let them tell you what it included. So Donald Trump was saying it did not include Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security benefits, but a lot of agencies were saying that their benefits were frozen. They could not access anything. And this affects everybody, even healthcare, even for people who are getting child care vouchers, that affect everyone. So I want you to go ahead and watch these two little small clips about federal freezes that people are facing all over the world, not just here in my state, but all over everywhere. Take a look.
Federal government by ordering a freeze on federal funding and offering government employees a buyout.
A federal judge temporarily blocking the pause on the distribution of funds after panic spread all across the country. We have team coverage of the decision tonight. Local 10's Terrell Fournier is standing by with the local response.
But we begin tonight with our D.C. Bureau Chief Ben Kennedy live in Washington with a closer look at the Trump executive orders. Ben.
Well, Denise Calvin, as you were talking about, the White House is offering buyouts to all federal workers, roughly 2 million Americans, to try and shrink the size of government. It comes as Trump's team wants to find out how tax dollars are being spent.
OMB just sent out a memo to Capitol Hill.
It's a memo by the Trump administration announcing a freeze on federal grants and loans in an effort to review spending.
It is the responsibility of this president and this administration to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars.
This move, which has now been temporarily blocked by a federal judge, would have required federal agencies identify and review all federal financial assistance programs and supporting activities consistent with the president's policies and requirements.
It means no more funding for illegal DEI programs. It means no more funding for the Green New scam that has cost American taxpayers tens of billions of dollars. It means no more funding for transgenderism and wokeness.
But Levitt adds Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and food stamps are not affected by this action.
Assistance that is going directly to individuals will not be impacted by this pause.
It's a pause that caused confusion among organizations that rely on federal funds as members of Congress attended the House GOP retreat at Trump National Doral react.
I think it's a fair proposition. We should, number one, look at who we're giving a grant to.
There are grants and grants, and some of them are for students, many people that live in 27, and I need to make sure that my Trump people know that they need to release it. It will happen. It's just that this is the Trump wave. You know, he's delivering on what he promised.
And again, the freeze has been temporarily blocked tonight. It is a case that could end up all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Live in Washington, D.C., Ben
remains blocked, but it's still leaving plenty of confusion on what comes next for programs here in Connecticut that many of you rely on. Your reporter, Marcy Jones, is live at the Capitol with the potential impact. And Marcy, Connecticut lawmakers are not holding back their thoughts on this, slamming the president over the last 24 hours.
That's right. A lot of people making their opinions known here. We're talking about billions of dollars at stake for people across the state. These programs that people depend on that have to do with childcare, environmental protections, and of course, some transportation aid. All of them scrambling right now to figure out how to reach a solution. More than $14.3 billion from the 2024 fiscal year directly impacting residents, nonprofits, schools, and other organizations in the state could be frozen while the Trump administration reviews funding. The order led to confusion and concern when Connecticut lawmakers and organization leaders tried to determine which programs would be impacted. The Trump administration initially claimed the order would not impact programs like Medicaid, Social Security, student loans, or food stamps, even though Connecticut's Medicaid portal was offline for portions of the day Tuesday. Democratic state lawmakers slammed the order, calling it unprecedented and an assault to Connecticut families. State Republicans supported the move, saying it's logical to reevaluate where taxpayer money is going. But program leaders who provide valuable services are starting to worry about their futures.
I mean, we have hundreds of thousands of meals that have been made through our senior services, our senior nutrition program, Meals on Wheels. We have hundreds of students across all of southeastern Connecticut that are at risk of no longer having access to affordable childcare.
Again, the block is only temporary. It will expire this Monday, February 3rd. Your reporter in Hartford, Marcy Jones, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
So guys, I'm getting ready to show you a clip here from Denver Health There was a federal freeze, of course, with Denver Health, and they were in a panic mode because this was a hospital that was receiving billions of dollars. Now, one thing I can say is I would not freeze all assets to everything, but I would have to go back and review the budget on things because I do feel like this particular hospital was receiving an abnormally large amount of money. And I think that funding is it's too high for that hospital. They do need a budget cut. Now, like I said, I wouldn't freeze everything, just freeze it all, but we will have to review this budget and you're going to have to, use your resources based off the budget we give you. But having billions of dollars sent over for research and for that particular location, I think that was just outrageously high. But take a look.
Says conflicts with Trump's agenda.
A federal judge paused that memo from taking effect until Monday. 9 News reporter Janelle Finch is following this story. Janelle, leaders in healthcare say without these funds, the impacts could be devastating.
That's right. A 149-page lawsuit from state health leaders across the country details the impacts of losing federal funding. Colorado health officials say care providers would lose billions. A block from a federal judge now buys organizations some time to figure out potential needs and next steps. The early freeze on federal funding was frustrating, to say the least. But that feeling only scratched the surface for healthcare officials in Colorado.
When funding to healthcare providers is abruptly or drastically cut off, for whatever reason and for whatever length of time, it is destabilizing and it is deeply worrisome.
In a lawsuit filed against the president, the Colorado Department of Public Safety says the state relies on more than $11 billion in federal funding each year. Denver Health says it receives about $89 million to support its programming and its patients,
of which we have almost 300,000.
Donna Lynn is the CEO of Denver Health. She says she woke up to a mess, unable to access their health care funds.
We funnel it to research, where we fund researchers who are doing, work on how do we improve our clinical quality of care? How do we do a drug trial? I mean, many things that improve the quality of care to patients and improve the lives of our physicians who are trying to deliver that care.
Access was restored by early afternoon. Around the same time, a federal judge blocked the funding freeze.
We got about $1.6 million of the amount of money that we tried to pull down today.
Lynn says that's the equivalent to 2 weeks' worth of money. She says hundreds of millions of Americans rely on Medicaid, Medicare, and other federal programs. And those healthcare recipients wouldn't be the only ones potentially impacted by a large-scale freeze.
Depriving people of those needed healthcare services is going to have catastrophic impacts on the health of the population, but also, quite frankly, politics.
Denver Health says it will continue to provide care to patients and pay employees. But if the funding freeze does go through, the provider says it will need to reassess how to move forward. Janelle Finch, 9 News.
So in the next clip, you're going to watch, there's a Head Start that is potentially going to shut down because he's scared he cannot pay his employees. He's scared that the federal funding freeze was going to freeze all his assets and he would not be able to have his employees come to work because he couldn't pay them. So they're worried that this is going to affect kids going to school, kids having the care they need in Head Start. Just take a look.
Reinstated.
A Head Start program in Waukesha and Washington counties has shut down until further notice. Our Bria Jones is in the newsroom to explain.
Kim, this will impact parents with children enrolled in the Head Start and Early Head Start programs in Waukesha, as well as Early Head Start for Washington County. Now, the executive director at the National Centers for Learning Excellence says the program won't resume until he can guarantee his staff will be paid.
We won't be open until we can actually receive money in our bank account.
Strong words from Dr. Tim Nolan, the executive director of the National Centers for Learning Excellence, a Head Start and Early Head Start program in Waukesha and Washington counties. Tuesday, a federal judge blocked a federal funding freeze ordered by President Donald Trump's administration. But Nolan says he's unsure funds he requested will be delivered in time for payroll.
We think that we're on a path to resolution, but it's been pretty horrendous time since 10 o'clock last night.
Nolan says his program employs 65 people with over 300 children enrolled.
I was just in shock.
The closure impacting Shateria Brown, a young single mother.
Not everybody got the funds like most, so I mean it's harder to pay, for childcare, or it's harder to pay for most stuff. So some people out here actually, struggling, hustling, to get the funds.
Stress, the executive director of the Wisconsin Head Start Association, says has been felt statewide.
If Head Start funding isn't frozen, but WIC is frozen, that's still a disaster.
The concern, other programs now possibly at risk.
While we might be able to breathe a small sigh of relief, I'm really still deeply concerned as someone who cares deeply about kids and families.
Nolan says with so much uncertainty, he just wants to protect his staff.
It's conceivable money could show up tomorrow and we would reopen the following day.
The Wisconsin Association of Head Start says people worried about the program shutting down should contact local lawmakers. Ben?
Bria, it kind of shows how thin the margins are. It's not like they have a ton of money in their bank account.
Yeah, he's worried simply just about making payroll at the end of the month. So very close here.
A lot of uncertainty. We'll follow what happens, Bria.
So now, in regards to the federal freezes, it has been reported that what President Donald Trump is doing is illegal. He did not have the right to freeze anything, and he did not go to the Senate or the representatives or the House of Representatives. He didn't do anything. He just signed papers on his own. And he's also firing people, because people in the federal government, he's firing them with the whole DEI because he's getting rid of that. So he laid them off. Whether it's temporary or permanently, he laid them off. And he also was telling workers that if you are not able to come to be, work in the office, then no need to come back, because we want you to verify that while you was working for the federal government, you wasn't having another job somewhere else. Okay, I understand that, because a lot of people took that work from home thing too serious, and they worked from home, but they wasn't taking it serious. They was doing everything else under the sun versus working. So he wants them to come back in office. And if you come back in office, you have to show that you was not working a side job at the same time you were supposed to be working for us. Okay, I agree with that. Anyway, guys, but back to the DEI, the whole federal freeze and everything in the DEI. But with the federal freeze, it was illegal. And you're going to watch this clip right here of someone definitely telling you what he's doing is illegal. Do not believe his BS. Take a look.
Trump administration last night to programs that affect average Americans. I have spent last night and today speaking with leaders in Washington, local elected leaders, nonprofit organizations, and my agency heads to make sure that we are doing all we can to stand up for working families and the most vulnerable people in our state who are affected by these cuts. The United States Constitution clearly states that Congress has the power of the purse and sets laws to obligate federal funding for all 50 states. What Donald Trump tried to do in the last 24 hours is illegal. Let's be clear. This is a demonstration of cruelty against people who depend on us. Working families who rely on federal assistance to pay their rent, people who need help paying their utility bills, parents who need critical programs like Head Start for quality, affordable childcare, and 3.5 million Illinoisans who get their health insurance through Medicaid. Despite what the White House press secretary said at the podium earlier, I believe it is my duty to report to you the truth of what actually happened today in Illinois. Donald Trump's administration is lying to you. The White House's attempt to walk back what they did today does not match what we saw on the ground. They assured us that Medicaid would not be affected. That was a lie. Our state agencies were unable to access the Medicaid system until an hour ago, preventing payments for services. And this has been reported from states across the nation. When we reached out to federal agencies, they informed us that they have been directed not to discuss any guidance with states. They have canceled previously scheduled meetings for this week. The White House assured us that Head Start would not be affected. That was a lie. Providers across the state experienced outages, and some were unable to make their payroll. They assured us that they were doing nothing to take away individual assistance from the most vulnerable people in our state. But they refused to say that they would restore LIHEAP, the Low-Income Housing Energy Assistance Program, payments to support the unemployment system, and Meals on Wheels. These are programs that hundreds of thousands of Illinoisans depend on: children, seniors, veterans, working parents. Let's just be clear about what happened over the last 24 hours. At 7:42 p.m. last night, we saw a memo from the White House saying that they were pausing federal funding across the board. This morning, along with all 50 states across the country, we discovered that our ability to access critical federal funding had been cut off. And now the administration would like us to believe that these were just coincidental website outages. Donald Trump and his administration have not earned the benefit of the doubt. They are either lying to us or they are critically incompetent. This is what happens when you staff the federal government full of Project 2025 contributors that don't have any experience governing and don't think that the laws apply to them. The consequences of their actions are not hypothetical. They are not numbers on a spreadsheet. These are real people, ordinary Americans struggling to afford groceries, rent, and health care. Donald Trump promised to lower prices for average Americans his first week in office. Name one thing that he's done to accomplish that. Prices have gone up, not down. Let me say this in no uncertain terms. What the president is trying to do is illegal. Let me say that again. What the president is trying to do is illegal. I know these are challenging times, and the Trump administration is trying to confuse the American people. That's why it's so important that we speak plainly. I was very happy to hear as I entered this room today that an administrative stay has been granted. Let me assure you, the state of Illinois will fight this unlawful order with everything we have. We're working with the Attorney General, who has moved forward with other states to continue pursuing legal.
All right, so on this next clip, you're going to watch President Donald Trump do his speech. It was considered live as of yesterday. So he's going to talk about everything regarding the freeze, but he's also going to talk about a new law that he put in place. So I want you to go ahead and take a look. That video is about 10 minutes long, so it's a little lengthy. But also what made it long is because the whole time he was talking, everybody wanted to do a lot of clapping. So that kind of messed it up because he kept stopping and pausing and stopping and pausing. But anyway, guys, just take a look, and maybe he could kind of clear up some of the issues or the misunderstanding. But also, don't take this word for word because some of the stuff is like bogus, okay? But just take a look.
Before we begin, I want to provide a brief report on the unprecedented success our country has been witnessing in recent weeks. Since even before the election, we've been making extraordinary progress. The American people gave us a clear mandate to save our country, and we won all 7 swing states by large margins, historic. Very importantly, we won the popular vote by millions and millions of votes. Also, all 50 states, as you know, shifted toward the Republican Party, and that's never happened before. All 50, every single one of them. In our first week in office, we set records, taking over 350 executive actions. That's not been done before. And it has reportedly been the single most effective opening week of any presidency in history. And we want to keep it that way. We want to keep it going. We want to keep it going. We've broken from decades of failed Washington policies and restored common sense and sanity to our government. We've unleashed American energy, and we've already achieved record low illegal immigration. As you see, there's nobody trying to get in. And that's what we've been waiting for a long time, and gotten woke ideologies out of our government and out of our military. The water has now begun flowing in California as we continue to increase the flow in coming days. Nobody's seen anything like that, and I've also taken strong action to regain control of the Washington bureaucracy. Just for clarification purposes, because it was incorrectly reported yesterday, we have informed the federal workforce, which they've looked to do for many years, that if they're working for the federal government, they must show up to the office on time and on schedule. We don't want them. We don't want them to work from home because, as everyone knows, most of the time they're not working, they're not very productive, and it's unfair to the millions of people in the United States who are in fact working hard from job sites and not from their home. As federal employees, they must meet a high standard. They're representing our government, they're representing our country. If they don't agree by February 6th to show up back to work in their office, they will be terminated, and we will therefore be downscaling our government, which is something that the last 10 presidents have tried very hard to do but failed. Most of the people we're talking about have not been going to their federal offices in many, many years, from even before COVID. But they have nevertheless been paid. Some have worked, some haven't worked, and most of the studies say that some have just gone through the motions. We may ask these people to prove that they didn't have another job during their so-called employment with the United States of America, because if they did, that would be unlawful. As you understand, a lot of people are getting paychecks, but they're actually working other jobs, so they'll have to prove that to us that they weren't. In any event, we're requiring them to show up to work or be terminated. We think a very substantial number of people will not show up to work, and therefore our government will get smaller and more efficient, and that's what we've been looking to do for many, many decades, frankly. Thank you. In addition, there was a short-term pause or funding freeze on certain discretionary spending payments, such as government grants, only for us to quickly look at the scams, dishonesty, waste, and abuse that's taken place in our government for too long. As was explicitly stated, this in no way affected Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, or other entitlements that Americans depend on. I've made abundantly clear from the very first day that I ran from office. That was a long time ago now. That's 2015. If you think about it, I announced in 2015, and we won in 2016. We did very well in 2020, but we did really well just recently. And I'm restating right now to correct any confusion that the media has purposely and somehow, for whatever reason, created Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid have not been affected by any action we're taking in any way, shape, or form. We are merely looking at parts of the big bureaucracy where there has been tremendous waste and fraud and abuse. In that process, we identified and stopped $50 million being sent to Gaza to buy condoms for Hamas. 50 million. And you know what's happened to them? They've used them as a method of making bombs. How about that? We stopped an attempt to make an illicit payment for illegal alien resettlement. We canceled $181 million in DEI training contracts. This is just for the training of people in DEI, which has been terminated and completely terminated. And we paused $1.7 billion in unauthorized payments to foreign organizations, including stopping more than $40 million that was on its way out the door to the very corrupt World Health Organization, which has not done its job and not done it properly. We also blocked $45 million for diversity scholarships in Burma. 45, that's a lot of money for diversity scholarships in Burma. You can imagine where that money went. These were the types of payments, and many others. I could stand here all day and tell you things that we found and we have to find them quickly because we want the money to flow to proper places. But these were the payments and types of payments affected by the temporary freeze, and the American people strongly support these efforts. I talked about it during the campaign, and they voted for us in record numbers. Every single day, we're now putting America first and fighting to get the most out of every single tax dollar for our great citizens. We've gathered this afternoon to take another historic action. However, in a few moments, the Laken-Riley Act will become the very first bill that I proudly sign into law as the 47th President of the United States. Laken was a brilliant and beautiful 22-year-old nursing student from Georgia, the best in her class. She was always the best. They would say, Laken, how do you do this? And what do you do? They were always asking her questions. She was respected by everybody, even her teachers. They respected her so much. From the time she was in first grade, Laken knew she wanted to spend her time caring for others. That's what she did. To her friends and classmates, she was a light of warmth and kindness in every single room. To her parents and family, she was everything in the world. They've had a miserable period of time. Just after 9 a.m. last February 22nd, Laken went out for a jog on the campus of the University of Georgia, but she was just never returned. She never came back, did she, huh? Parents are here, sister, all of her relatives. While on her run, Laken was attacked, viciously assaulted, beaten, brutalized, and murdered by an illegal alien gang member who was set loose into our country by the last administration. We are deeply honored to be joined today by Laken's parents, Allison and John, and her sister, Lauren. Thank you very much. Thank you. So sad. We were together right after that happened, and it's a tremendous tribute to your daughter, what's taking place today. That's all I can say, but it's so sad we have to be doing it at all. Thank you very much for being here. To Laken's family, we will keep Laken's memory alive in our hearts forever, everyone's hearts. With today's action, her name will also live forever in the laws of our country, and this is a very important law. This is something that has brought Democrats and Republicans together. That's not easy to do. Laken did it. Laken did it. America will never, ever forget Laken Hope Riley. The vicious criminal who murdered Precious Laken was an illegal alien member of the barbaric Venezuelan prison gang known as Tren de Aragua. He trespassed across our southern border in 2022 and was apprehended by Border Patrol, but under the cruel policies of the last administration, instead of being deported, as he should have been, he was released into the United States, as were millions of other people, many of them very dangerous people. And you see what we're doing, we're getting them the hell out of here. He was soon arrested again in New York City on charges of endangering a child, but because of New York City's deadly sanctuary policies, as we have in California and many other places, which we're going to end them, he was released again to reoffend. The Biden administration then provided this illegal alien criminal with a free, taxpayer-funded flight from New York to Georgia, where he was arrested yet again, constantly, this time for stealing from a Walmart along with his gang member brother, who was a bad one. Only after being released a third time by the U.S. law enforcement did this cold-blooded criminal go out in that fateful morning hunting for women on whom to prey. That's what he did. He hunted. It was like a hunter. And we're going to show him who the hunter is. This horrific.
So you just saw Trump's speech, and if you did not understand what the Laken-Riley Act law is, then go ahead and just watch this real quick. It's just a quick little clip of what exactly the law is. Take a look. President Trump signs the Laken-Riley Act into law. This law mandates the federal detention of illegal immigrants who are accused of theft, burglary, assaulting a law enforcement officer, and any crime that causes death or serious bodily injury. The Laken-Riley Act is named after a Georgia nursing student who was killed by a Venezuelan alien who was previously arrested and paroled into the U.S. under the previous administration. Under President Trump, violent criminals and vicious gang members will no longer be released into American communities. This is the new law. So just to sum up everything, now you should know exactly what DEI means, what it stands for in the workplace, how it relates to everyone and not just certain people. It helps us all. And then also now you know about the federal freeze. You also know about the new law he just put into place. Now, one thing I would say about this new law, Miss Laken-Riley, I have no idea who she is. Never heard of her before. But all of a sudden now they have so many nice things to say about this person. You know, I'm definitely sorry that she was brutally murdered, but there was a lot of people in this world who have been brutally murdered by who knows who, and nobody has got a law passed behind them being murdered. But all of a sudden now we have a new law from this so-called nice nursing student who I have no idea, never heard of her, but they say she was so sweet and nice, and now we have a new law after her. So what about all the other people out here in the world who was brutally murdered by gangbangers, gang members, you know, whether they were black, white, Hispanic, Mexican, or whatever race it could have been? What about them? Have they been noticed? Have they been recognized? So I'm not disagreeing with the law. It ain't like I got no 2 cents on the law anyway. But I'm just saying, I'm speaking my concern about this new law. How did he find this particular individual to make a whole law after her? That's my question. But guys, thank you for watching today's Tea Talk, Neka's Tea Talks, as known as today as Neka's News. So come back for more, because I will be talking about more politic topics, and I'm going to keep you up to date on everything going on in the world today. And also, make sure you remember, this is not the only thing I talk about on this channel. I talk about anything that I feel like talking about. So check out all my other Tea Talks as well. But thank you for watching. Stay tuned. Have a great day. It's been real.